So a question I wanted to ask was this. We should ask ourselves what our real objective is.
Yeah.
Do we in fact wish to see a world without faith? I think I would have to say that I don't. I don't either expect to or wish to see that.
What do you mean by faith?
I don't think it's possible because it replicates so fast, faith, as often as it's cut down or superseded or discredited. Replicates, it seems to me, extraordinarily fast, I think for Freudian reasons, principally to do with the fear of extinction.
So you mean faith in supernatural paradigms?
The wish.
But why would you not wish it?
Wish thinking. And then the other thing is, would I want this argument to come to an end? With all having conceded that Hitchens really won that round, now nobody in the world believes in God. Now, apart from being unable to picture this, I'm not completely certain that it's what I want. I think it is rather to be considered as sort of the foundation of all arguments about epistemology, philosophy, biology, and so on. That it's the thing you have to always be arguing against. The other explanation.
It's an extraordinary thing. I don't understand what you're. I mean, I understand you're saying that it'll never work, but I don't understand why you wouldn't wish it.
Because I think as a bit like the argument of the argument between, Huxley and Darwin. Huxley and Wilberforce, or Darrow and William Jennings Bryan. I want it to go on.
Because it's interesting.
I want our side to get more refined and theirs to be ever more exposed. But I can't see it with one hand clapping.
But you don't want it to go on with the jihadists. I mean, there's a certain face of this.
No, but I don't have a difference of opinion with the jihadists.
Well, you do in terms of the legitimacy of their project.
No, not really. No, there's nothing to argue about with them. I mean, there's a simple matter of I want them to be extirpated.
Or then move it down to the people who are blocking stem cell research.
That is a purely primate response with me. They're recognizing the need to destroy an enemy in order to assure my own survival. I have no interest at all in what they think.
But it sounds like
really, we haven't still come to your question about Islam, but no interest at all in what they think. Only interested in refining methods of destroying them.
Okay. In other words, you've simply given up
a task in which, by the way, one gets very little secular support.
Yes,
most atheists don't want this fight. The most important one is the one they want to shirk. They'd far rather go off and dump on Billy Graham.
Well,
because on that they know that they can't. There's no danger.
I think that because we find the idea of exterminating these people just abhorrent, and we think that besides it will breed them
extirpating.
Extirpate.
Yes. Complete destruction of the jihadist forces. Extermination, I think, has to be applied more as a species or to.
No, but Christopher, going back to your thing about it sounds as though you like argument. You like having. It's almost the theatre of having an intellectual argument which would be lost.
Well, I would rather say the dialectic, actually, Richard. In other words, one learns from arguing with other people.
Yes.
And I think all of us around this table have probably enhanced or improved our own capacities as reasoners.
Yes, but I mean, there's plenty of other things to reason about. You can having won the battle against religion, we can go back to science or whatever it is we practice, and we can argue and reason about that. And there's plenty of arguments that are really worthwhile.
But it'll always be the case that some will attribute their presence here to the laws of biology, and others will attribute their presence here to a divine plan that has a scheme for them.
Well,
you can tell a lot, in my view, about people from which view they take. And as we all know, only one of those views makes sense, but how do we know that? Because we have to contrast it with the opposite one.
Well, let me make an analogy here, though.
Not going to spare.
Because you could have said the same thing about witchcraft at some point in recent history. You could say that every culture has had a belief in witches, a belief in the efficacy of magic spells. Witchcraft is ubiquitous, and we're never going to get rid of it, and we're fools to try. Or we can try only as a matter of dialectic. But witchcraft is going to be with us. And yet witchcraft has almost without exception. I mean, you can find certain communities
Not at all.
No, I mean, real witchcraft as
is completely ineradicable. It spreads like weed, often under animist and Christian.
No, I don't mean
not in the Western world.
I mean frank witchcraft. Witchcraft of the evil eye, and instead of medicine, you have.
You think you've got rid of that?
Fundamentally we've got rid of that, yes.
But in any case, don't you want to get rid of it? I mean,
Not at all. There's currently a campaign to get Wiccans registered to be buried in Arlington Cemetery.
Well,
but Wiccans are to witchcraft as Unitarians are.
Right. They're not real. I'm talking about a willingness to kill your neighbor because you think that there is some causal mechanism by which they, through their evil intent, could have destroyed your crops psychically, or cast an evil eye upon your... I mean, it comes in ignorance of medical science. I mean, you don't know why people get sick, and you suspect your neighbor of ill intent, and then witchcraft fills the void there.
No, I wouldn't say in such a case that one wished to be... one didn't wish to be without it. That we lost something interesting to argue with.
We are effectively, we're not dealing with the claims of witches intruding upon medical. Don't go to alternative medicine and acupuncture here. I'm talking about real witchcraft.
Well, I was about to do that very thing. Yeah. And the Washington Post publishes horoscopes every day.
Yeah. Astrology is yet another matter.
But astrology is a...
Let's take a moderate... Astrology is not going to be eradicated.
But it doesn't need to be eradicated.
No, but you're confusing whether it's going to be eradicated and whether you want it to be eradicated. And it sounds as though you don't want it to be eradicated because you want something to argue against and something to sharpen your wits up.
I think that is, in fact, what I...
But in fact, instead of thinking about eradication, why not think about it the way an evolutionary epidemiologist would and say, what we want to do is we want to encourage the evolution of avirulence. We want to get rid of the harmful kinds. And I mean, I don't care about astrology. I don't think it's harmful enough. I mean, it was a little scary when Reagan was reportedly using astrology to make decisions. But that, I hope, anomalous case aside, I find the superstition that astrology is important to be relatively harmless. If we could only do the same thing, if we could only relegate the other enthusiasms to the status of astrology, I'd be happy.
Right. Well, look, you don't accept or you don't like my answer, but I think the question is going to be asked of us. It was asked of me today, actually, again on the TV. It said, do you wish no one was going to church this morning in the United States?
Right.
What's your answer?
Well, I've given mine. Richard's disagreed a bit. The answer I gave this morning was, I think people would be much better off without false consolation, and I don't want them trying to inflict their beliefs on me. They'd be doing themselves and me a favour if they gave it up. So perhaps in that sense I contradict myself. I mean, I wish they would stop it, but then I would be left with no one to argue with.
But you have many other subjects.
And I certainly didn't say that I thought if they'd only listened to me, they would stop going. Okay, so there are two questions here. So that was my very experimental answer. But I'd love to hear, would you like to say that you look forward to a world when no one had any faith in...
Yeah, I want to answer this. Whether it's astrology or religion or anything else, I want to live in a world where people think skeptically for themselves, look at evidence. Not because astrology is harmful, I guess it probably isn't harmful, but if you go through the world thinking that it's okay to just believe things because you believe them without evidence, then you're missing so much. And it's such a wonderful experience to live in the world and understand why you're living in the world and understand what makes it work, understand about the real stars, understand about astronomy, that it's an impoverishing thing to be reduced to the pettiness of astrology. And I think you can say the same of religion. The universe is a grand, beautiful, wonderful place. And it's petty and parochial and cheapening to believe in jinns and supernatural creators and supernatural interferers. I think you could make an aesthetic case that we want to get rid of.
Fine.
I could not possibly agree with you more.
But let's talk about priorities.
Okay.
If we could just get rid of some of the most pernicious and noxious excesses, what would be the triumphs you would go for first? What would really thrill you as an objective reached? Let's look at Islam, and let's look at Islam as realistically as we can. Is there any remote chance of a reformed, reasonable Islam?
Well, isn't the present savage Islam